All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're uncovering this incredibly tragic, almost unbelievable love story behind one of the ancient world's absolute greatest architectural marvels. We're heading to a place where raw, ancient ambition collided with unparalleled devotion. Seriously, we're going to explore a structure so magnificent and so totally original that it literally changed how we remember the dead forever. Now, to really set the stage here, I want you to picture some of the grandest tombs around the world. Think about the breathtaking beauty of the Taj Mahal, right? Or maybe the superimposing presence of Lenin's tomb in Moscow. But have you ever actually stopped to ask yourself, where did the actual word mausoleum come from? Like, why do we use that exact word to describe these massive, monumental structures? Well, to find that answer, we have to travel way back to the year 353 BC. We're heading over to the coastal city of Halicarnassus. And if you're looking at a map today, that's exactly where the modern city of Bodrum sits in Turkey. So back then, this city was the capital of a small kingdom called Caria. And for almost 20 years, it was ruled by this highly ambitious, incredibly clever guy named King Mausolus. He was the kind of ruler who knew exactly how to play the game, bowing to the giant Persian Empire on the surface while secretly transforming his own kingdom into this brilliant hub of Greek culture. We're talking wide streets, a massive theater, a heavily fortified port, and a naval fleet that basically controlled all the trade in the Eastern Mediterranean. But here's the thing, Mausolus didn't rule alone. He ruled alongside his wife, Artemisia. Now, plot twist, they were actually brother and sister. They were following an old Persian royal tradition of keeping marriage within the family to, maintain pure power and bloodlines. And I know that totally shocks our modern sensibilities, but what really matters for this story is that this wasn't just some cold marriage of political convenience. They were fiercely devoted to each other. They shared this intense political partnership and, based on literally all the historical accounts we have, a profound, completely genuine love. They ruled side by side, sharing every major decision. They even minted coins with both of their profiles on them, basically governing the entire kingdom as one single unstoppable entity. But, as you might guess, this powerhouse partnership was totally shattered when King Mausolus suddenly fell ill and died. Artemisia was left completely inconsolable. Actually, the source material tells us she was so consumed by her grief that she famously started mixing his ashes right into her daily drinks. Yeah, she drank them so that he would, quite literally, become a part of her forever. But listen, she wasn't just a grieving widow lost in despair. She was still a powerful queen, and she came up with an incredibly ambitious plan. She decided right then and there she was absolutely not going to build some common, everyday tomb for Mausolus. No way. She was going to construct something so unique, so grand, and breathtakingly beautiful that his memory would achieve true immortality. Her goal? She wanted his name to survive as long as there was a single person left on Earth to read a plaque. So, to actually pull off this unprecedented vision, she didn't hold back at all. She didn't just hire local builders. Instead, she brought in the absolute best architectural and artistic minds from across the entire Greek world. She needed true masters, people who could somehow translate her immense grief and her overwhelming love into a massive physical structure. And wow, did she deliver on that? She assembled an unheard-of concentration of talent. For the architecture, she brought in Satyros and Pythios. And keep in mind, Pythios was already famous for helping reconstruct the massive temple of Artemis. Then, for the artwork, she hired 4 incredibly renowned sculptors, Leochares, Scopas, Braxis, and Timotheus. The crazy part? Each master sculptor was assigned a completely different side of the tomb. I mean, just imagine the challenge there. They had to somehow harmonize their highly distinct, super individual styles into one single cohesive masterpiece. Okay, let's try to build this incredible structure from the ground up in our mind's eye. It started with this massive square base, an enormous block of stone that was roughly 30 by 30 meters. From there, you'd climb steps to a podium completely covered in statues of gods, lions, and Amazons. Right above that stood a row of 36 slender, super elegant Ionic columns. And tucked between these columns were life-size statues, plus these really intricate scenes of mythological hunts and battles. Now, those columns supported a massive stepped pyramid roof. And for the grand finale, capping the entire thing on the very top step of the pyramid was a magnificent quadriga. That's a grand marble chariot pulled by 4 galloping horses, and it was driven by giant statues of Mausolus and Artemisia themselves. To put that staggering design into a bit of perspective for you, this whole structure reached about 45 meters in height. That's roughly the equivalent of a 15-story modern building. So, okay, while it obviously wasn't as tall as the Great Pyramid in Egypt, it was infinitely more ornamented and detailed. It wasn't just a tomb, it was this soaring tower of pure sculpted artistry. But here is what's truly fascinating. When it came time to carve the dedication plaque, Artemisia intentionally made her own name tiny, like almost totally invisible. Meanwhile, Mausoleus's name was carved in these giant, bold letters. It's such a selfless act, really. It ensured that this entire mountain of marble was completely solely dedicated to him, making absolutely sure he would never be forgotten. Even in that chariot statue way up at the top, she had herself sculpted leaning slightly back, almost as if she's just resting against him for all of eternity. Tragically, Artemisia never actually lived to see the final stone placed. She passed away just 2 years after her husband, in 351 BC. Tradition says she died of a broken heart, though honestly, some historians suspect those ashes she'd been drinking might have poisoned her. But the work, it didn't stop. The master artists just kept building. Why? Because the queen had left them exceptionally clear instructions, and, maybe more importantly, plenty of funds to see the whole shebang through to completion. When it was finally finished, it literally left the ancient world speechless. It was so completely breathtaking that the first-century Roman writer Pliny the Elder, and keep in mind, this is a guy who had seen basically everything the ancient world had to offer, he dubbed it an extraordinary marvel. The impact was so huge that the Greek word for the structure, mausoleon, almost immediately became synonymous with any monumental tomb. And incredibly, this giant monument of love stood for over 1,600 years. When Alexander the Great came marching through during his campaign against the Persians, he was so struck by its sheer beauty that he deliberately ordered his troops to spare it. I mean, it survived the Romans turning Caria into a province. It survived early earthquakes, the rise of Christianity, the rise of Islam, but, eventually nature and human greed caught up with it. A massive earthquake in the 12th century finally brought down the columns and that huge pyramid roof. The final, devastating blow, though, that came from the Knights of St. John in the 15th century. They found the monument in ruins, and since they needed stones to reinforce their castle of St. Peter in Bodrum, well, they literally dismantled the ancient wonder block by block. They threw priceless, master-crafted marble into kilns just to make lime mortar. They took these magnificent sculptures and turned them into mere rubble to fill in their defensive walls. It's heartbreaking. So for centuries, almost nothing was left visible above ground. But then, in 1856, a British archaeologist named Charles Newton showed up and started excavating the site. And miraculously, he actually recovered some precious fragments. He found the foundations, parts of the Amazon battle frieze, and, this is the crazy part, most astonishingly of all, he found the massive statues of Mausolus and Artemisia that once rode in that chariot 15 stories up in the sky. Today, you actually don't even have to go to Turkey to see them. You can view these battered but still incredibly beautiful statues right in the British Museum in London. If you get up close, you'll see Mausoleus has this very severe face with a frizzed beard and these really deep-set eyes. And right beside him is Artemisia. She's wrapped in a traditional mantle, and her stone face still wears this very mysterious, almost sorrowful smile. Now, if you were to visit Modern Baldrum today looking for this marvel, I gotta warn you, you might be a little underwhelmed. Honestly, all you're gonna find of this ancient wonder is the stone base and some scattered blocks sitting in an empty lot surrounded by modern houses. There's just a small tourist sign reading, Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Tourists usually just snap a quick photo on their phones and then hurry off to look at the very castle that was built from its bones. So looking at that empty lot today, we really have to ask ourselves a tough question. Did Artemisia's grand plan ultimately fail? Did she fail to make her husband immortal, considering the massive physical tomb she poured her entire heart and kingdom into was completely destroyed? Well, the thrilling twist to this whole historical tale is that she actually won. Sure, the physical marble crumbled, the statues were broken, but she ensured that the name of her beloved King Mausolus became the literal root for the everyday word mausoleum in over 20 different languages all around the world today. So what you should really take away from this explainer is how this totally unconventional, honestly kind of strange ancient love story forged not just an architectural marvel that stood for 16 centuries, but an enduring word that we still speak every single day. Artemisia couldn't bring Mausolus back from the dead, right? But she absolutely made his name echo across 2 millennia, right into our modern vocabulary.
And I think that leaves us with one final, super fascinating thought to ponder. If the true measure of a monument isn't in the stone it's built from, but in the memory it leaves behind, well, isn't the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus actually the most indestructible building in human history?